Know what to eat, but find yourself not eating it. Perhaps you've been on diets and off again and just wonder why you can't stick to them. The Eating For You podcast, hosted by me, Sally Ann Pisk, will show you what's been missing so you can enjoy a healthier way of eating that lasts. Hi, Sally Ann here, and I'm really excited to have Grace Hughes with me today. Welcome, Grace.
Hello, it's so lovely to get to chat to you today, and I'm so excited to have our conversation.
Yeah, and let people know who you are. Grace is a women's health naturopath who is passionate about evidence-based medicine and especially treating the root cause of health issues, and wants to create a space so women can actually feel seen, be heard, and understood. And I reached out to Grace for this episode because I had been seeing some of her recent work on Instagram looking at the pros and cons of supplementation. And I thought, yes, we need to have a conversation about this. So, Grace, I'm so pleased that you're here.
I'm so excited to chat all about it as well.
So, Grace, what are your main concerns about supplementation from what you see online, what you hear from clients and other people that reach out to you?
Yeah, so I guess one of the biggest concerns I'm seeing now with the rise of social media is there's this anti-drug movement. And so it's kind of this conversation around drugs being bad for you, they're dangerous for your health, all of these different reasons. And then the new solution is supplements, right? It's this natural, safe alternative to medications that are going to give you all of these different health benefits and treat all these different conditions without the risks that medications come with. But unfortunately, that narrative is actually not true, and it's perpetuated by wellness influencers and people on social media. And I guess in my space specifically, one of the reasons why I'm very passionate about being evidence-based as a naturopath is because it's also our industry which is contributing to this narrative as well, and people being encouraged to move away from drugs and instead going on to supplements instead. And that combined with influencers talking about hormone balancing supplements or like what supplements they take in their morning routine, it gives this idea that in order to be healthy, you need to take supplements. Biggest concern with this kind of messaging is, number one, people are moving away from taking really important medications when they should be taking medications. Number two, thinking that they are all safe and don't have harmful effects, which is also not true. They can interact with drugs, also taken at the wrong dosage, or if you have certain conditions, they're not safe to take as well. And then the third thing is that some of these supplements that are recommended are not actually backed by good quality research. They might be just one or two animal studies. And so my concern is people is wasting their time and their money by being influenced around buying these random supplements.
Totally. And I, was also doing some research for the podcast today. And there were about 3 sources of reasonably recent, data on Australian use of complementary medicines, of which, vitamin and mineral supplements fit into there. And one report suggested that 9 out of 10 adults are taking a supplement of some sort. And when I reviewed the most recent, survey on dietary intake and physical activity, then it just doesn't add up, because what people are actually reporting that they're eating, the deficiencies are not there to warrant this amount of supplementation. And also from our conversations before, going to air, some of the supplements that people are taking are not actually the ones where there's a major risk of deficiency for. And I'm right with you too, because if you look at the evidence for supplementation to actually lead to that cause and effect situation, well, we know supplementation is useful, say, for folate in terms of preventing neural tube defects for babies, but there's really not a lot of evidence for all this range of supplements that are on offer. And I don't think people understand that. And like you said, I was reading another article by Australian subscriber back from 2021, and they were saying that supplements are all very good at indicating how they may help you, but definitely leaving off the list of harm that they could be causing as well.
100%. Yeah, no, totally. And I think just to add what you were saying there as well, when it comes to vitamin C, which is one of the most
Yes.
commonly bought supplements, what most people don't realize is vitamin C is a water soluble vitamin, which means that when you consume enough in your diet, any excess that you're taking in, which is from a supplement, you're basically peeing out. So it's just expensive urine.
Oh,
And if people
definitely.
knew that, they would realize that they're just wasting their money.
Oh, and not only that too, it can lead to, in the short term, gastrointestinal upsets, diarrhea, cramping, bloating, and also can contribute, depending on the form of supplementation and what else is in the supplement, I should say, it can lead to kidney stones as well. So we've got to be so careful. And I think the other thing I was reflecting on too before our conversation today was that if you're taking various supplements that have a little bit of this here and a little bit of the same thing in another supplement, you could actually exceed the recommended sort of levels for some vitamins. And like you said, if they're water soluble, like the B group vitamins and vitamin C, they just end up in the toilet. But one that concerns me, and I'd like your view on this because my clients mention taking it, and that's vitamin B6. And interestingly, it is one that there are some adults in this country that do have a deficiency of B6. But you go to the other end and, overdosing on B6 is quite a concern. And I saw it a lot in type 2 diabetes when that was my main focus of my work. Peripheral neuropathy was a complication of diabetes, and you would see people taking B6 thinking it was helping their nervous system, but it could actually be contributing to, that early onset of neuropathy. So do you see B6 as an issue with people that you're in contact with as well?
Yeah, so I actually have had one client who was getting really bad stomach aches and was feeling really nauseous and dizzy. And I went through one of the biggest things I always do with my clients is I always ask what supplements they're taking, but not just what supplements they're taking, what protein powders they're taking, because a lot of protein powders these days are actually formulated with other B vitamins and things like that. And so turns out she was taking a protein powder which had already got the B complex in there. Plus, she was taking a formula for PMS that had B6 in it. And then she also was taking just a general women's health multivitamin. And her B6 was through the roof how much she was taking. And I said to her, I was like, it's actually all the supplements you're taking. Let's taper off this. And yeah, and it was amazing. She literally saw such an improvement in her symptoms after we had reviewed what supplements she was taking.
I know. And I think the other thing is, going back to your comment at the beginning about this rise in supplementation and the amount spent on supplementation has kind of doubled in this country over a 10-year period. And, then people say they can't afford to buy healthy food or they can't afford to keep going on with their consultations with their naturopath or their dietitian or their physio, whichever person they're getting support from. And again, I think this whole idea of it's a miracle cure. Like if I take these supplements, I don't need to worry about sleep. I don't need to worry about movement. I don't need to worry so much about what's on my plate. But unfortunately, you can't separate all of these lifestyle factors from how you feel.
100%. And just talking further on the difference between diet and supplements is supplements are an isolated nutrient and food is so much more complex than just one single nutrient. One of my favorite examples to give to people is an apple. So if we think of what is found in an apple, we've got things like fructose, but we've also got things like pectin and things like that. And so if someone was to just consume fructose, well, the risk of that is that they could then develop things like fatty liver disease or type 2 diabetes, etc. But why is it that when we eat an apple, we're not getting type 2 diabetes, etc.? And the reason is because of what is packaged within that apple, and that's the pectin and the fiber and all of these other ingredients that counteract the fructose. So this is the exact same when we're talking about the difference between a supplement and a food source, is that when we're taking a food source, we're looking at the whole food and how they all interact in different ways. The other thing as well is that when it comes to food, yes, we're getting some really great research out there, but there's still, we really don't know about what other ingredients are in food that are beneficial for our health, but also how these nutrients interact. So I would say taking food first approach rather than a supplement approach is going to benefit you a lot more because of these other benefits that we don't necessarily know about as well.
No, and I think the first sort of research looking at traditional patterns of eating to highlight how foods work together was the research into the traditional Mediterranean style of eating. And it was like that way of eating, the food was more than the sum of its individual nutrients. And on another level, just looking at the difference between different dairy foods and the impact on our blood lipid profiles, whereas, your fermented foods like your yogurt and your cheese, the saturated fat doesn't seem to have that lipid elevating effect that maybe cow's milk does, full fat cow's milk. So I think you're quite right. There's still so much that we're finding out. But if you're listening and thinking, oh no, does that mean nobody knows what's going on? That's not true. We know enough from the research that's been happening for decades now. And it really comes back to having whole foods. And of course, my approach is very much about the mindful eating and the mindful nutrition. So reflecting on that personal experience of eating beyond what's on your plate in terms of what it's doing to your health and how you actually feel after eating as well.
Totally. We also need to have the conversation of how we're eating. When people talk about struggling with bloating and things like that, one of the biggest questions I ask my clients is, okay, well, tell me about that experience of when you're eating those foods. Are you, sculling a smoothie while you're on the run? Are you madly trying to eat and work on your laptop at the same time? Our brain needs to be reminded that we're actually sitting down to eat. And the way we eat has a massive impact on our digestion process and all of those different things as well.
Yes, and I think when you look at gut health, because that can get misrepresented as well, can be just sort of smoothed over to like, take these supplements and that might be a whole other episode going into that. But you're quite right, just being focused and mindful while we eat. And there's a lovely saying in Eastern medicine, where the focus is, the chi or the energy follows. So it's kind of like you're running and you're trying to eat at the same time. It kind of doesn't work, but you don't have to be physically running. It could be your mind's racing, or you're jumping between, looking after others at the table, you're reading something, or maybe the TV's on, or there's so many distractions in life, and to actually just sit and eat is a mindfulness practice in its own right, and it has many benefits, not just on our digestive processes, but it has that nice calm rippling effect into the rest of our day.
Yeah, totally. I 100% agree.
Yeah, so Grace, recently, I've seen your posts on Instagram about who's guiding your choice of supplements. And when I say yours, I'm talking about our listeners, our viewers. And I've had held a strong belief for over 30 years that all supplements should be prescribed by qualified healthcare practitioners. And that can get complicated because I had my own hiccup, so to speak, with a practitioner that provided me a supplement at one stage when I was having some issues with my gut and irritable bowel and so forth. And I didn't really question this healthcare practitioner because I had been referred to them by a friend who's quite sort of knowledgeable about health. And I had the opposite effect, like I ended up with constipation, bloating, went back to my integrative medical doctor, who's a Chinese medicine practitioner and GP. And he said, no wonder the ingredient that is in this so-called digestive supplement has actually had the reverse effect on you. And it's actually it's a herb that was very hard to digest. So when we're seeking advice, I say to my clients all the time, because I'm like you, I find out what's going on, what they're taking, how they're eating and all that sort of thing. And people don't realize, and it's great to trust your healthcare practitioners, but you have a right to actually ask, well, what is it about this supplement? And how did you find out about it? And why do you recommend it? And asking those questions. But certainly I think it would be easier if there was some accreditation of healthcare practitioners to be actually able to subscribe, herbal medicine, vitamins and minerals, and even protein supplements for that matter, and meal replacements. What are your thoughts on that too, Grace?
Yeah, so it is a real difficult one in our industry. And it was actually part of the reason why I avoided becoming a naturopath in the first place, is because the term naturopath is not a regulated term, which means anyone can call themselves a naturopath. You could be a conspiracy theorist and call yourself a naturopath, and you can do a 2-week tea course and call yourself a naturopath, or you could do a 4-year Bachelor of Health Science degree and call yourself a naturopath.
Yeah.
And within my degree, I did a few units on pharmacology. So I understood how drugs work, how herbal medicine work, how they interact, all those different things. We learnt about physiology, all these different things that are really, really important when it comes to providing healthcare services. And I guess where the problem of an unregulated industry is that number one, it means that anyone can call themselves a naturopath, prescribe supplements, etc. The other problem with that is that it also means that even when people have done a degree, if there's a lack of regulation, it means that people can still practice the way that they want to practice and could still be causing more harm.
Yes.
One of the things that is trying to change in our industry is we have a growing body of associations. So I am associated with an association who is evidence-based and is wanting to advocate for evidence-based medicine regulation on our industry. And in order to be able to have that association, you actually have to have done a degree. And one of the biggest things I encourage people to do when they are seeing a naturopath is to actually ask, number one, where they studied and whether they are associated with an association. And if they are not with an association, then I would really question, number one, have they had it removed from them in the past because of unethical practice, or have they not done a degree that, means that they're not qualified to provide healthcare? So that's one of the biggest things that I sort of wanted to talk on around that area. I guess the other issue with people, randomly prescribing supplements and things like that is we should be able to ask questions. And this is with any healthcare professional. I also do have a lot of patients who have gone to see their GP and have asked questions and have been shut down for asking questions. It doesn't matter what health professional you see. You should be able to ask questions because you need to be informed to make a decision about your health and also where your money goes as well. So if my clients ask me a question about what the safety is around the supplement, what's the evidence behind the supplement, I am really glad they asked it because then I know that they're making an informed decision. And I don't feel insecure by being asked those questions because I know what the intentions are of the information I'm providing. Whereas if someone can't give you information to back up the choices of why they're prescribing what they're prescribing, a bit careful around what information they're giving you and where they're getting that information from as well.
Yeah, and I think too, just to add in there, if you're sort of following us in this conversation and wondering, well, I don't know what questions to ask, and that's part of what I see my role. And I suppose being trained as an allied healthcare practitioner, we were very much aware of how teams could work together. And I had great experiences of this working in diabetes care, but also in women's health and a couple of other areas. And it's being able to get that advice and take the guidance from another healthcare practitioner and being able to then confidently ask your medical practitioners about whatever you want to ask them. And I'm total agreement with that. And it can feel daunting because our healthcare system, especially from the medical point of view, has been evolving over a number of years where doctors are wanting to work more in partnership with their patients rather than just give directives in terms of what's best, for your health. And the other thing that we often come across, especially with medical practitioners, is that they don't have very long consultations. So the more we can be prepared before we go in with our list of questions, then the quicker we can get through it and feel like we've been heard. So it's complicated, but I think where I was getting at with the whole sort of situation we're now in, where many different types of healthcare practitioners may recommend supplements, is that not everyone's trained. So I think most of us as healthcare practitioners, but also as receivers of those services, would understand that, well, dietitians would have some understanding of nutrition supplements because that's our training. Naturopaths, well, they work with vitamins and supplements and herbal medicine, so they would have some understanding. But then there's other practitioners that are not nutrition and herbal related that are selling supplements. And in my case, I actually got back to the supplement company because they were supposedly practitioner only supplements. So only practitioners could subscribe them and prescribe them. And I said, this is not on. You're allowing someone to prescribe supplements who are not trained in nutrition. So that's one level. But then there's that whole over the counter as well, because when I speak to my clients, most of them have self-prescribed. They actually haven't been advised by anyone to take these things, maybe other than a vitamin D calcium supplement, for women post-menopause. But otherwise, they just think, oh, that's good. I need a bit more energy, or I'm pre-diabetes, so this supplement's supposed to be, could help with my blood sugars. And I have had clients spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on the internet buying supplements to help them with their blood sugar control. And that's just one example. And then I know something, you wanted to add in here too, Grace, is that then we have people who are not even trained at all in health, promoting supplements, as you said, as part of their daily routine.
No, totally. I think it is really scary, and it comes back to this idea that people forget that supplements can be dangerous. And on the topic of calcium, for example, if you have a safe amount of calcium, let's say you've got healthy calcium levels, taking a calcium supplement can actually be dangerous. It can cause heart issues and things like that down the line. A lot of cardiologists hate calcium supplements for that very reason. So yeah, it is very scary. And I guess like what you just mentioned in intro there is the biggest issue I'm seeing in the current industry is that it's influencers now promoting these supplements. One of the biggest one that I am seeing as a naturopath is hormone balancing supplements. And that is where I'm like, number one, what are we even balancing here? What's even in that supplement? And why are you taking it in the first place? And why are you recommending this supplement? And I always try to remind my clients, whenever you're hearing, someone's morning routine and things like that, you need to ask the question of what is their incentive here to actually recommend that supplement? Because most people on YouTube who are recommending supplements, they get commission off that supplement. So it's in their best interest to recommend that supplement, even if it doesn't work. It's the same thing with the skincare industry that I'm also very passionate about. Is often people are showing their before and after of this skincare that they're taking, but you don't know the context of whether, for that week they might have just had really clear skin and then they took those photos during that time. And maybe they only use those skincare products for 2 days just to recommend it. So we don't fully know the context of why they're sharing it, how actually effective it was in helping them. And then also the extra layer to that is everyone is also very, very different. And yes, that supplement may have worked for that person, but it doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. So let's say, for example, if a influencer says that she has really bad fatigue and she's taking this iron supplement and it suddenly improved her iron levels, right? If someone is going, oh, okay, I've got fatigue, I need to take an iron supplement because she said it improved her energy levels. You take that iron supplement, even though you might have healthy iron levels. Well, number one, you shouldn't be taking iron supplements if you do have healthy iron levels because it's not good for your gut health and for so many other reasons. But also, it's not going to improve your energy levels and you would have just wasted your money there as well. Whereas if you looked into getting personalized advice, went to go see a practitioner who could help investigate the root cause of your fatigue issues, you might find out that it's actually to do with the fact that you have a vitamin D deficiency, or maybe you have insomnia and you're struggling with your sleep. An iron supplement is not going to fix your energy levels if you are struggling with sleep issues. So this is where it's really important to get that personalized advice, because there are so many different reasons for so many different health issues.
Yes, and even with sleep issues in women, especially for women post-menopause or perimenopausal, how sleep disorders show up in women is very different to men. And my recent, conversations with Rosemary Clancy, who's a sleep psychologist, and she specializes in helping women sleep throughout lifespan. And I have to put my hand up and say I didn't realize that, sleep apnea is quite common in, postmenopausal women, and that's all to do with the changes in estrogen levels. It's got nothing to do with weight. We used to always think about where body fat was located in terms of a risk factor for sleep apnea. And so you've got a situation there that Rosemary was explaining, is that women were getting prescribed all sorts of things, even sedative medication like sleep tablets, which actually worsen the sleep apnea. So it doesn't matter whether you're coming from, which angle you're coming from. It's really important to get that diagnosis, because as you were just saying, an iron supplement or may not help. And then in Rosemary's situation with her patients, that they're often getting prescribed sleeping medication, and sedation, as I just said, increases the risk of sleep apnea. So very important. And I don't want anyone who's listening to us to think, oh my goodness, this is all too hard. It's actually not so hard. And as Grace, wants to do, and I want to do, and other holistic healthcare practitioners, we want to help you get to the root cause of what's going on for you and your experience of health, or ill health for that matter. So Grace, what do you suggest people do if they're listening along thinking, oh, I'm taking supplements and I don't know whether I should be? What would your guidance be?
Well, just to sort of add on to what you said there as well, I do want anyone listening to this, if they feel almost like, oh, well, I have spent all of this money on supplements. Oh, I feel ashamed, or I feel bad that I bought all these supplements. Please don't. Also know that I've also done this too, which is why I have the passion for what I do, and why I talk about what I do.
Yeah.
But the thing is it comes down to it's marketing, it's a lack of regulation on the industry, all these different factors. It's actually not your fault. And usually the intention of buying these supplements is because out of desperation, it's out of, oh, I might save a bit of money to try and just improve XYZ without having to see a practitioner, which might cost a bit more money. So I can totally see the incentive for buying the supplements, and there's no shame or anything around that. If you are struggling with different health issues, my biggest recommendation is, number one, to figure out, okay, what is my health issue? Is it life-threatening or is it non-life-threatening? If it's life-threatening, obviously, please go and see your doctor. Don't go and book in a consultation with a naturopath if you suddenly have a kidney infection or things like that. Those really need to be seen by a GP. If it's something that is bothering you day to day, such as fatigue or PMS or period pain and things like that, you've gone to see your GP and haven't sort of got the outcome that you're looking for, and you're wanting to dig a little bit deeper in terms of what's affecting those symptoms based on your diet and lifestyle, seeing a qualified dietitian or naturopath is your best investment, because number one, it's going to save you a lot of time, because you're not having to do all the research. You're not going to have to try all of these different supplements to see what works and what doesn't work. But also, you're more likely to get a personalized prescription that's actually going to address your issues, and that's going to be better for your health. It's going to save you time, and it's going to also not come with the risks as well. So my biggest recommendation is to speak to a qualified health professional. And if there is any doubt about how can that person help me or things like that, I don't know about you, Sally Ann, but even just booking in a free discovery call and asking those questions can be a really great way of just figuring out whether that's the best service for you. And if something's ever out of my scope of practice, I will always refer on. So it's always best to also book in a free discovery call, or ask email questions and things like that to figure out whether that's best for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Grace, thanks for saying that too, because I know people buy supplements because they want to improve their health. They see it as an investment in their health, not realizing that they could be being led astray, or there's an important piece of their health that hasn't been uncovered to explain why they're fatigued or why their perimenopausal symptoms are so severe. And we're not expected to know how to do this by yourself. And I think this is something that I know you do and I do. We do encourage our clients and patients to actually get to know their mind and body better, and be able to start saying, oh, that's interesting. I had an example of this recently with a client on a coaching call, and she said, I realized that, when I included this for breakfast, my blood sugars went up. So I swapped it out and now it's fine. And this is the sort of step-by-step instruction that really lifestyle, holistic focused healthcare practitioners can help you with, because that can be the other thing. It's like, oh, it's too hard to change my whole lifestyle or everything that I eat. But we don't ask you to change everything at once. We look at what's going to be of most benefit to you alongside what is most doable and sustainable for you. And I think that's the big thing. And we have to be careful too that some healthcare practitioners and health organisations will hand out information sheets about different things. That's very generalized information, and often that comes with a list of 10 or more things to do, and you're not going to know where to start. And one of my clients said this to me recently, that in the past she would just be given more generalized information in a consult and didn't know where to start, didn't have time, didn't feel that she could make a difference by just starting with one thing, and basically delayed looking after her diabetes for many years because she thought it was all too hard.
100%. And just to add on to that, I had a conversation with my partner the other day, and he was saying, how do you feel about where the healthcare industry is going to change with AI? Do you reckon people are just going to want to get health information from AI? And I said, no, because, well, yes, they might get health information, but our industry will change. And the reason is because we live in a health information epidemic. We are getting so much health information. It is so hard to know what to listen to, like you said, where to start. But we're humans. We need that one-on-one conversation. And where I see our industry changing is getting that accountability support, getting that cheerleader, that person who's supporting you and advocating for you and wanting the best for you to help you show up as well. I feel like that is a big part of what we do that is not spoken about enough as well. And anyone that tells you need to change everything overnight or suddenly build in this magical morning routine is going to change everything. If you're listening to this, you'll probably relate to that moment where you have said that to yourself, oh, I will just change this one thing overnight. And it might last 1 day or 2 days, but then, will it happen for the rest of the year? Probably not. Whereas when you do that small, sustainable, slow changes, that's when you get the real long-term results. And I love to refer to it as the tortoise approach. We want to do everything super slow, super consistent, and super realistic. Yeah. And that's what gets results long-term.
Yeah, and I think that's really the benefit. And I hear it a lot with ladies who reach out to me. Oh, look, Sally Ann, it's just food, it's eating. I really should be able to sort this out by myself. And the fact is that some of the ladies that I work with have been trying to sort this out for decades. And I'm talking 50 plus years with some of my clients. So if you're sort of thinking that, then just put a pause on that thought and think, well, how much time and money can you actually save, and how much benefit will you get in return from actually reaching out to a health practitioner that specialises in women's health? There's myself, there's obviously Grace, and there's others that work in women's health specifically. And I think that's what's really important as well. And I reflected on this in my podcast episode for International Women's Day, is that, men's health and women's health, yes, there's some things that do overlap, but women are different to men. And some of even today, our practice guidelines for certain health conditions are based on research with men. So it's important to help break that down. And of course, my question that I suggested people ask from that episode was, well, yes, you're recommending I do this, but was this actually supported by research with women? Because I think the more we speak up, and as you were saying that you like to achieve, Grace, is that women actually feel seen, heard and understood. And we've just got to keep saying, I have different chromosomes, I don't have the male chromosomes. So we can just get all caught up in it, and healthcare practitioners can too. And my experience is that when I've sent my clients off with some questions for their practitioners, they've been really responsive to that. And I suppose going back to your comment about all the information that's out there, yes, it can be overwhelming. But if you can actually sit back and start saying, well, I'm not doing that at the moment, I wonder if I should be, then write that down as a question for your healthcare practitioner. Don't just assume you need to be doing that or taking that supplement or swapping from, full fat dairy to low fat dairy or giving up on dairy and having soy. You don't have to do that all by yourself, but they're questions to reach out and ask qualified people.
100%. No, I love that. I love what you said.
Yeah, Grace, is there anything else that you would like to share on this topic of supplementation?
Yeah, I think we've really covered most of it. I think really the key takeaways from what we've spoken about is number one, not assuming that supplements are always safe, and also that medications are bad for you, or supplements are a better alternative to medications. Whenever you're wanting to look at taking any supplement, it's always important to have a conversation with a qualified health professional with that supplement. Or even if you're not in the position to see a practitioner and you've bought a supplement and you're not sure if it's safe or not safe, it's always really important to always speak to a pharmacist or your healthcare professional before taking any supplement. And also, don't feel bad if you have bought supplements or protein powders and things like that in the past because of what you heard online. As I said, marketing is a crazy tool and it is very effective in what it does. I guess that's also another conversation to have around the food industry and how marketing plays a massive role in our diet and our dietary choices. It's the same thing. And the conversation shouldn't be about the individual and it's their fault. It should be the bigger question of how is that happening in the first place?
Yeah, and I think the other thing that came to mind as you were speaking, we haven't really touched on this, is that if you do have a drawer full or a cupboard full of supplements and you've been taking them, rather than go cold turkey and just stop everything, it's a good idea to have a conversation as well with your practitioner to say, look, I don't know, I've been taking all this stuff and can I just stop it, or should I just gradually decrease it, or is it some of it still worth taking? Because you've made that investment and maybe it can be helpful. So again, don't just think, oh, I don't need supplements and stop. Have that conversation as well with your healthcare
100%.
practitioner.
Yeah, no, totally.
Grace, thank you so much for sharing today. Where can people find out more about what you do?
So I currently post on Instagram at Santel Naturopathy, and you can also find me over on TikTok as well. And I'll give you a little insight into something I'll be doing on Instagram that no one really knows just yet, but I am creating a series on myth busting, lots of different supplements that are coming out, health trends. So if you've ever tried the beef tallow for acne sort of trends that you're seeing online, then you definitely need to give me a follow there, because I will be talking about all the different trends that are coming out. And if you ever have seen a trend or a supplement that you're not sure as to whether it's a good one or whether the trend's actually evidence-based, send me a DM and I'd love to create a video on it as well.
Thanks, Grace. And I'll make sure your links are included with the notes to this episode. I think it's been really important too in this conversation today, even though it doesn't really come up for you and I, because we're quite respectful of how each other works, and the fact that, I'm a dietitian, I'm Western trained, whereas you're a naturopath. And I think that's really important, because my background is in integrative medicine, to understand that different practitioners can work together. They can have very similar views on things such as supplement and, supporting long-term changes to eating and health. So I think that's a real plus as well, Grace, that we can demonstrate that healthcare practitioners can work together and they can support their patients and their clients in a positive way as well.
I love what you've said there. And yeah, the biggest thing that I love to advocate for in our industry is we're not an alternative medicine industry. We're a complementary medical professionals that are there to complement the missing gaps. I really believe that if we work together, then that's when we're going to get the best results for our patients. And I'm really glad you reached out to me, because I have found in the past, I think, with good reason, there are a lot of dietitians and GPs who are very skeptical of naturopaths. And it's something I'm really trying to really advocate, that we're actually not here to work against you. We're actually here to work with you so we can really create a better outcome for our patients.
Yeah.
And with, the current medical industry and where things are going, where it's turned into a disease management industry because there are so many people to see. There's a health epidemic going on, and we need to respect that GPs only have a certain amount of time to allocate to their patients.
Yep.
Their training is in pharmaceuticals and acute management, whereas dietary management is not a tool that they're educated on in their degree. Whereas that's where dietitians come in, and that's where they can provide that support. So I really see that our industry can just sort of fill the gaps and really help create a better outcome for our patients.
Grace, once again, it has been wonderful sharing with you today, and I'm sure we've blown a lot of myths out of the water for our listeners today, which is really important. And if you've been listening along and you have enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review. Let us know what you enjoyed from the content we shared today, and share the link on your social media pages. I look forward to sharing with you again next week. You have been listening to the Eating For You podcast with Sally Ann Pisk. If a long-term way of healthier eating is of interest to you, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast.